Welcome to Building Better Businesses. I'm Kristen Dees, founder of Catalyst Consulting, an agency that helps small businesses and entrepreneurs start, grow, and level up their businesses. This podcast will bring you interviews with experts in all things business related. Have questions for a business attorney? We've got answers. How about your health insurance? Got you covered there too. New episodes coming your way every week. Find us on the podcasting platform of your choice. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Building Better Businesses with Catalyst Consulting. My guest today is Carlee Myers, inventor of the Stress Less method and my current coach, which I'm pretty excited about. We met through Polka Dot Powerhouse originally. Actually, we met through Christine Trumbull, who was also a guest on here. I don't think her episode's gone live yet, but anyway, yeah. So she was like, I feel like you guys have the same energy and would really appreciate each other. And then we did. And it turns out we swear almost the same amount, probably. It's one of my favorite things about you. Especially as my coach. I can just be like, let it all out. But anyway, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Yeah, tell us a little bit about Carlee.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you already introduced my business or at least the Stress Less method. I'm the founder and leader here at the Stress Less Company. And what I do is I help business owners who are overworked and exhausted find that sense of peace and freedom that they desire, all while hitting those financial goals that they want to hit while working less, which is pretty dope. But on a personal level, some things that I love to do. I love to garden. I love all things like, this is going to sound interesting, but like almost doomsday prepping. I love food preparation. I love canning. I love like, what rope should I have in my pocket at all times to survive if I were dropped somewhere random? So that's a little tidbit about some things that I'm interested in right now.
Nice. Like survivalist kind of.
Survivalist, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That sounds a little bit less crazy than doomsday. Sorry if you're a doomsday prepper, but I feel like you know what I mean. Yeah. Because you probably also don't say doomsday prepper when you tell people what your hobbies are. But
my hobby is just preparing for the end of the world.
For the apocalypse. Good to know. So all I have to do is get across the country to Carlee's house and I'll be okay. I know some people with, weaponry and stuff along the way probably too. It's fine.
Yeah. At least I will say like food preservation is up my alley. And if you want food, don't show up at my house because I'm not sharing if it actually is doomsday. But otherwise, come on over.
Yeah. That's good. My mom's into that stuff too. Like she's always been, it's kind of like the like pioneer woman stuff, like, growing a garden and then canning the fruits of your actual labor and all that kind of stuff too. So
yeah, it's pretty cool. Wasn't there some bad stuff about Pioneer Woman? Not to get
I feel like the actual, like if you're talking about the actual company, yeah, I feel like there was something. We'll have to Google that.
Conversation we'll get back for another time.
Yeah, fact check episode coming soon. I think you're right though. Something shady. So sorry if it's not true. Anyway, yeah. So what's your background? How did you end up? I forget how you ended up doing what you're doing now.
Okay, yeah. Can of worms, first of all.
Sure. Yep.
A little bit of a trigger warning as well. So I actually got into this line of work because of something that happened to me when I was about 12 years old, believe it or not. So around the time that I was 12, a man was actually murdered in my home and my mom was shot 3 times. It was, I guess for context there, my parents, things weren't working out between my parents and they decided to get separated. And, as we do when we go through breakups, separations, or divorces, like when we're ready, we start dating again. And that's exactly what my mom did. And she started dating a bad apple. She realized it pretty quickly, broke it off, and again, started dating somebody else. And the problem was that bad apple never fully let go. And so he was the one who broke into my childhood home, killed her new boyfriend, and tried to kill her. Yeah. So I tell you all of this because, first and foremost, my mom survived. She wasn't supposed to. It was pretty much a miracle, but she made it. And if you saw her today, you'd have absolutely no idea. But I really struggled for a long time. I struggled with the symptoms of PTSD, with stress, with night terrors, with jumpiness. I mean, you name it, I was probably struggling with it. And it took me a while before I opened up with people and shared what was going on in my life. And when I finally got the courage to open up, I said things to people like, hey, I'm feeling a little stressed, or I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, or I'm kind of struggling right now. And I would ask people for advice. And it was like clockwork. I got the same 5 or so responses every single time. Hey, Carlee, have you tried therapy? Have you tried yoga? Have you tried meditation? When's the last time you hit the gym? Like, hey, you should probably try changing up your diet. Like all of these things where I was just basically like, what? Do you think I've been living under a rock? Like, no shit, Sherlock. And some of the stuff worked a little bit. I have to give credit to some of those things. But none of that stuff really got me over the hump where I was experiencing things like, those beautiful states of mind, right? The joy, the silliness, the goofiness, the contentment, the groundedness that I knew was possible. And in the same breath, I kept getting the same message from everyone around me. So I would start to respond to those conversations. I'd be like, well, meditation isn't really working for me. And it was like clockwork. Again, I got the same sort of responses. Didn't matter what the modality was. It was like, well, you haven't found the right meditation, or you haven't found the right teacher, or you're just not doing it right. Or that just proves you need to do it more. Right. And from my perspective, I was like, well, this is just that advice in and of itself is unhelpful, because I thought that there was something wrong with me. Right. I thought that that I wasn't doing it right, that maybe there was something fundamentally wrong with me. And as a result, I ended up struggling for more than 10 years. And it was, 10 years before I finally figured out what worked for me. And it was at that point where I was relieved, but I was also like, oh my God, like, why isn't anybody talking about this? I kind of threw a temper tantrum. I was angry. I was like, what the actual? I'm going to edit myself here, right? Like, are you kidding me? Why isn't anybody talking about this? And then it hit me like a ton of bricks after I was done throwing my temper tantrum that I was supposed to be the one that was talking about this. And here we are.
Nice. Yeah. That is a good, what did you say? It wasn't rabbit show. The long story. Yeah. Because I think, everyone kind of yours is obviously a little bit more traumatic of an origin story than most, or at least what most people share. Like some people probably have some stuff that they just don't really talk about. Sorry, my dog is, it's the story of our lives these days. Your dog coughs, mine just jingles.
100%.
Yeah, he gets very restless, and so now he's just like wandering around. I'm like, dude, lie down. You're killing me. Anyway, but yeah, so I think the common thread amongst pretty much all entrepreneurs is that there is some sort of, little drunk ladybug journey to where you are now. And, finding your purpose and what you're supposed to bring to the world. And that's an important part of it. And sometimes some shitty stuff has to happen first, I think.
Totally.
Or at least you made something out of it,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I appreciate it. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Figuring
Thanks
out all
for
the stuff.
me.
Yeah. Let's see. It's a hard segue. What are some common challenges that you see business owners working with when it comes to running their businesses? Like the common things that maybe people come to you for?
Yeah. So I would say hands down, the folks that come to me, they're usually coming to me for at least one of the top reasons is they're coming to me because they're exhausted. They know that they have a deep sense of purpose. They know that they're meant to make a huge impact on the world. And yet there's something incongruent, right? They're like doing that. They're like following their to-do list. They're going. They're hustling. They're following the big mindset that's like everywhere on social media that's saying push, go. When they're taking a break on the weekends, keep going. You're going to beat them. And it's just that mindset that the folks that I work with, they end up burning out on. And So they're working, but yet the results are not there. Whether it's the results of feeling fulfilled or the results of financial, it's just not happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's one of the things too that we've talked about is like, I am tired all the time. And so that's definitely a key thing for me too, which I think is also sometimes a symptom of burnout. I think that's pretty common for a lot of us. And like you're saying, it's just like the hustle culture, like just work harder and you'll get more. You'll just work more hours, just, sacrifice more of your life. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't think that's the right answer. So here I am.
Let's just do that one last task and everything will be better. And yet there's that voice inside our heads that tells us that that's not true. And we know it, but we want it to be true so badly. Because I know that was the way it was for me. Like I would look at my to-do list and be like, I just have to get this done, because if it doesn't get done, the biggest fear I had were things were going to fall apart. Like my business was going to fail. I wasn't going to achieve the mission or the purpose I was put on earth here to do. It's just, there's a lot going on between the exhaustion, the burnout, the little voice inside the head, the whole 9 yards.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's also, I mean, we've talked about that. This is why we're spirit animals or something. You're my Patronus. I'm yours. I don't know. But it's the belief that I'm on this earth to change the world in some way. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be the entire world, but I would like to change a large part of it. And the fear that I'm just like not doing enough to do that. And like that I'm just, if I just worked 18 hours a day, it would be fine. And I don't do that now. Like we've talked about that too. I'm like, I feel like I have a pretty good schedule work-life balance. What it takes up in my brain is totally different. So, so like when people are kind of trying to work through this process, what are some red flags that like people should be looking for when they're trying to kind of figure out their stressors or triggers or like the things, the cycle, the story you tell yourself, et cetera? Like what should they look for?
So I would say this kind of ties back to the stress less method that you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, right? Where the first step of the stress less method is manage your energy. That's huge. If we are in fight, flight, or freeze mode, if we're triggered, if we are burnt out, et cetera, right? We basically lose access to effectively solve problems. We lose access to effective critical thinking. So it's, one red flag that we see is that we're making stupid decisions. Like we look back and we're like, why did I do that? Why am I self-sabotaging? We don't know it in the moment that maybe we're self-sabotaging, but we can look back and be like, that's self-sabotage, that's self-sabotage. Or we can look back and have no idea why we're not getting the results that we want. Those are all red flags. But really step 2 in the stress less method is to identify your blocks. And this is really the deep work of the work that I do with my clients. And what it really starts with, just to give us a little cliff or a little peek into what I do with my clients, is that it starts with really identifying every single little thing that is creating a negative state of mind. So every little thing in your life that, past, present, and even future, that's creating anxiety, that's creating fear, that's creating despondency or sadness, that's creating frustration, stress, everything. And what I do with my clients is we look at all of those instances and we start to dig deeper. What basic human needs are being threatened by these? Maybe they're still being met, but what are being threatened here? Why do these things bother us so much? What's the root? Because, a lot of folks will come to me and they'll say, Carlee, I need more money, or I need more time, or I need more X, Y, and Z. And my immediate response is, well, that's great. And I want that for you, but that's not the problem. That's not the real block, right? Because people come to me and they'll say, Carlee, the reason I'm struggling is because I don't have money. And I'm like, there's a deeper reason why you're struggling and why you don't have money. And it's, in that place that we have the opportunity to grow and move, through the following steps of the stress less method, where we create the plan to remove those blocks, where we actually remove those blocks one by one, where we have the opportunity to, really step into embracing grace, which is walking the walk, talking the talk, having these these blocks removed, and also removing the ones that come up by circumstance. That maybe we're in a different life situation where something pops up. But in doing this inventory, what all of my clients really end up seeing is they end up seeing a really deep ingrained pattern. So for me personally, when I first did this block inventory, the first thing that came up, fear of abandonment. Every issue, almost every issue, 78% of the things that came back on my block inventory all came back to a singular block. And it was that I was behaving in self-sabotaging ways because I was afraid of being abandoned. Now that's my personal story, right? I have clients where, for instance, I have one client who 60% of her inventory came back and said, hey, she had this limiting belief that in order to succeed, she had to change who she was, that she had to abandon herself. And so every single business owner that I work with, this block inventory comes back. What is the real block? What's underneath the surface? Because I guarantee you, it's not money, it's not time, it's not all the tasks on your to-do list. There's something deeper.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. It's not the symptom; it's the finding the root cause. That's the struggle. No, it's good because I think we had talked about this maybe the first time we met. Was like the process that I've gone through like over the last couple of years as far as like personal growth and whatnot. And then I had talked to a relationship coach just kind of like incidentally, and we just like talked about some of that stuff. And I was like the inner child stuff. I was like, oh my God, like what? Like how, because I'm very self-aware, I'm reflective, I'm obsessed with growing, and like so I'm like, what? Like I've been putting myself in the same story over and over again for my whole entire freaking life. I'm like, neato. Sometimes you just need someone to help you like through that. So that's why you're here for me. But yeah, it's crazy how much that stuff can affect you, or just like that. Yeah. Like the story that you're living in, or the trauma that you've survived, and like what that does to you and the issues that it causes. Cause even if you have an idyllic childhood, that still does stuff to you. That still causes things later that you don't know are shaping your view of the world and how you react to all the things. So,
yeah, I mean, and that goes into that also goes into little T trauma and big T trauma. Like the story that I shared with you earlier was big T trauma, but I've also experienced little T trauma where, we're experiencing like just repeated socialization where we're like told, oh, you can't, sit up, dress right, act like a lady, whatever the story is, right? And just having those little voices inside your head or from outside of you, that's enough to create that little T trauma of like, I'm not good enough. And that creates a pattern. And I would say too, just to acknowledge that this whole process of like identifying blocks is not like, let me whip myself while I'm down. Let me say like, oh, you piece of shit. Like that's why you're failing. Like, this is not what it's about. It's about the opportunity to grow. It's about, recognizing too, that all of these things on this list, when you work that second step of the stress less method, served you at one point. 100%
because it's survival. Yeah, like it's you protecting yourself, whether you know it or not, from the things in the way that you best know how to. And so that's what coping mechanisms are and defense mechanisms are and all that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, you got all this because something terrible happened, whether it was, like you said, big T or little T, it doesn't matter. Like, and I find that a lot of times too, like the little T stuff is more insidious and sneaky, and you don't know that it's happening because it's the little things, like you said, like be quiet, you're too much, girls are supposed to do X, Y, or Z, or you don't want whatever it is. Like that's what's in my head too these days. But yeah, those things are just like, and you're like, oh, dang, dude, that's why I apologize for myself all the time. And I don't need to. I don't have to apologize just for existing, But yeah, it's a survival thing. So
yeah, I mean, it served us at one point. It doesn't serve us now. And that's where, now it's the opportunity to say, wait a second, this doesn't serve me now. I can make the shift. The other thing I just wanted to talk about, just because it reminded me, what you were
Mm-hmm.
sharing reminded me of something that I've been kind of studying, is that this is really like, I guess, let me back myself up here. One of the things that I teach with my clients in my community is the difference between the ego and our intuition. Or, depending on your language, like the ego mind and your soul or your spirit or your authentic self, or however you want to word it, right? But the ego and your intuition, they're both guidance systems. They're not bad, right? But your intuition is the guidance system that's always there for you, no matter what. It's like the GPS in the car, right? It's there for you along your entire journey. It's saying, turn right in 300 feet, right? It's always guiding you. So many of us, though, have gotten disconnected from that ongoing guidance system of the intuition. So we're turning up the music to ignore the GPS. We're like, goodness gracious, Siri, shut up. And we're muting her, right? And we're ignoring the intuition and that guidance system that's supposed to be there for us the whole way through. And then on the flip side, we have the ego. And the ego is also a guidance system. But the way that I would compare it to is, it's like the fire alarm in a building that's like, okay, well, you're not going to listen to the GPS that's saying, go down the hall, go out and get outside because there's a fire in here, right? The ego mind's like, get the fuck out right now. Like, you're going to die, right? And so many of us have ignored that intuition or authentic self, or whatever you want to call it, that guidance system, for so long, that all we have is the ego mind. All we have is fear. All we have are the emergency notifications. And that's what leads us to the place, especially in business, where we're just pushing, task after task, because our ego mind's telling us if we don't do something, we don't know the answer, right? Because we're not listening to our intuition. But if we don't do something, things are going to fall apart.
Mm-hmm. No, it's huge. I was just talking about that, I think literally last night with one of my besties. We were talking about trusting your gut, and like how the world makes you think that that's crazy also, and like your instincts and intuition. And it's like, she's done a lot of work recently on that too, but we were just that whole conversation of like trusting your gut, and what's the difference between that and like impulse. Because like impulse control versus instinct is different sometimes, at least for me anyway. I like to have some impulse problems, and I'm like, oh, this seems fun. I was like, that was not your instincts, Kristen. That was not what you should have done. That was a stupid idea. You should have listened to your actual instincts that were like, you probably know how to do that. I like to go on adventures, So anyway, yeah, I think it's super important to trust your gut. Because I know for me, like my instincts are never, ever, ever wrong. Ever. Like they are never wrong. And that was one of the things too with like the inner child stuff. She's like the 8-year-old girl inside you, or whatever age, she always knows, and you keep ignoring her, and and she's trying to tell you and be like, dude, don't do it again. Like, come on. So really just trusting that aspect in all aspects of your life, I think is important. It was like connecting those dots for me too. So yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
I'm still not great at it all the time either, because sometimes I'm like, I really want to do this thing. I'm like, no.
It can be hard to differentiate too, between the ego mind and the intuition. And that's part of the training process, especially in business, because you have, the fear just to bring money forward, right? Like the fear around money. And sometimes your intuition tells you to do something that makes no financial sense whatsoever. And your ego minds will like, do this, and this marketing activity, and you'll get the money you want. But your gut knows, right? So it's this, it can be hard. You're like, well, wouldn't my intuition tell me to do these marketing tasks, right? So it can be a really confusing place. It's a practice.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Cause I have that similar struggle sometimes with like the difference between self-care and self-sabotage, and which we had talked about, and I'm sure we'll get into at some point in time, like, like hashtag real talk. But yeah, it's getting back to the core of yourself and trusting what's actually right is tough. Yeah. So that makes sense. That was a good call out. What was it? Ego versus intuition or instinct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Either one. Yeah. It's all linguistics, use whatever language works for you.
Yeah. So is the ego kind of like lizard brain, sort of like where it's just like, let's get out of the building. Okay. Yeah. Or like this creepy guy walking down the creepy person can't, statistically, it's a creepy guy. Sorry, everyone. Coming down the sidewalk at night, I'm like, something bad is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think like if we're going to get into the depths of that, I would say the ego is a tool that's really been given to us for the physical realm, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
So we have like the intuition, which is more like the abstract, the intangible, our, the floating something inside of us that makes us us. And then we have the ego. And I think the ego really originally its purpose was to say, okay, you are separate from that tree. Do not walk into that tree or else you're going to have a big bump on your head. Like it really was there to keep us physically safe. And I think it still is. But I think we've taken some of the ego, we've kind of twisted the uses of the ego to apply it to more abstract things. And I think that's where we run into the problem.
Oh, that's interesting. That makes sense because our world has become a lot more complex and theoretically safer in the basic ways that we originally needed to have that protection in place, like, pterodactyls or trees or whatever. Now
Bears,
yeah. Yeah, now we have like therapy and stuff, and that's like a whole different thing too. But yeah,
Totally.
yeah, or bears. That's funny. No, I like that. That's a good analogy, metaphor. I don't know.
Something.
You said linguistics, schmingistic. Yeah, I always get confused on those ones. I'm like, it's a story that means a thing. Okay. Anyway, so when you're working on like the de-stress part of it all, I guess, like where does that process kind of start? Is it similar to what you were describing as far as like creating the inventory and working through that? Like your method goes the same regardless, right?
Yeah. So it starts with the first step of the stress less method, which is to manage your energy. Because it goes back to what I was sharing a little bit earlier, which is if we're in fight, flight, or freeze mode, if we're stressed out, if we're on the verge of burnout, we've lost our ability to effectively solve problems. And that includes solving the problem of whatever stress is on our plate, whatever stress is in our life. So the first step is to really manage our energy, whether it's through kind of traditional modalities like meditation, yoga, if it's going to the spa, God love me a spa day, like for real, managing, it could also go into deeper work, the work that like the block inventory, that could be a form of energy management, auto rating. I mean, there's so many different tools that we could use, but it starts there. And I guess to kind of summarize how I approach energy management with my clients is that we all start with creative stress reduction, because I think this was the big thing that led me to the work that I do today personally. So creative stress reduction is any activity that gets us out of fight, flight, or freeze mode and gets us into rest and digest mode. So basically we have two parts of the nervous system. One part is in charge of triggering that fight, flight, or freeze. The other part is triggering the rest and digest, which is undoing all the harm that the fight, flight, or freeze did in our bodies. So creative stress reduction gets us out of fight, flight, or freeze, gets us into rest and digest. Doesn't matter what activity it is. So for me, it's gardening, it's food preparation, it's playing with my dog, it's going on a walk. I mean, the list is endless. For someone else, it may be something else. I mean, for you, Kristen, what are some things that you enjoy that get you into that rest and digest mode?
I work out a lot, and I am super active in the outdoors. So I do golf, hiking, tennis. I like to read. Read is kind of my, I do that at home. That's kind of my chill. Cause I stopped watching TV, during quarantine. Cause I'm like, I can't, this is too much. It was too much. It was becoming a problem. I'm like, so I just cut myself off cause that's what I seem to do. It works though. It seems to work for me. So yeah. So reading, outdoor stuff, hanging out with friends. I have a lot of active friend dates. So I'll go with my best friend and we'll play tennis, or I'll go play golf with somebody or something like that. And that's kind of like a 2-for-1 for me.
Yep.
So
totally. Yeah. So it starts with creative stress reduction. And then I will put an asterisk on that for your listeners, which is that creative stress reduction can be anything, but before we engage in it, we have to ask ourselves two really important questions. So first and foremost, is this activity even going to get me into rest and digest mode? And second, is this activity numbing or nurturing? So am I, turning on Netflix to avoid all of the stress of my business or the worries or my relationship or whatever the hell's going on? Or am I turning on, I love Friends. I'm guilty of the good old sitcom, right? Am I turning on one episode of Friends to get my nervous system calmed down, to activate rest and digest with a deadline to get back to work, to resolve the problem at hand, right? I'm nurturing myself so I can return to the work, the deep work, whether it's in our personal lives, professional lives, or otherwise, versus numbing, which is avoiding, which creates more stress in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I did just talk to you, right? I'm like, I feel like we just talked about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I've talked to my best friend too. We were just talking about a lot of this stuff too. So it's all kind of like in the same vein, right? Like I feel like the learning and growing process kind of takes, for me anyway, it takes a lot of like talking and reflecting and like talking through it with different people, like get different perspective. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, different things click. But the thing, and this is why I stopped watching TV, any kind of streaming stuff, is because I've wanted to be more intentional about the time that I was spending. And that's kind of to your point. It would be like, I would turn on Netflix or Amazon, Hulu, whatever. Cause I like watched all the shows, like we're in quarantine. What the hell am I going to do? And I'd be sitting there like scrolling on my phone and then like 5 hours goes by and I've watched an entire season of something. And I'm like, it's more like the numbing thing, like you were saying. And then the other thing that made me think of too is when we were talking about whatever I think I saw it on TikTok. It's where I get all my information on almost everything. Was somebody said, are you relaxing or are you just, it wasn't disengaging, dissociating. It's like, are you relaxing or dissociating? And I was like, oh shit, I think I actually do that. Cause I'm like, I can't do, there's certain, like, I just can't work on Saturday, Sunday. I have a hard time responding to text messages sometimes, especially when I'm super burnt out from the week. I'm like, okay. So it's not me taking a self-care day. It's me just like dissociating from the world and completely shutting down. I was like, that's different. Okay. That hits a little different.
Yep.
Yeah. So that like super resonated with me too. The whole, are you just shutting down and zoning out because you don't want to deal with any of the other stuff? Cause you're right. I don't feel great after that. Like the Monday comes around or the end of Sunday, I'm like, man, I'm a piece of crap. That was not fun.
Yeah. And it's like, I used to do this all the time. Like I would, in my younger days on the weekends, I would go out drinking. As I got older, it would be just sit on the couch. Don't talk to me. You better leave me alone kind of vibe. Like fuck off. Yeah. Bitch, don't come my vibe kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm drinking my glasses of wine glasses.
Yeah. Like, but, and yet every Monday would come and I would be like, can I have a vacation from my vacation? Can I have time off to recover from my time off? And I would look at my time off, right? Like I would look at my time off and I'd be like, well, what were you doing? Like you were sitting on your ass watching Netflix. Like what? Why? And that's where the deep thinking goes in, where you're like, okay, actually I didn't nurture any part of myself. I just disassociated. I was just numbing because I couldn't handle the thought of thinking these thoughts of worrying about work or worrying about the business or worrying about whatever anymore. I just couldn't. And so my mind just went into fight, flight, or freeze mode and disassociated. And then that's where you go into like the conscious work of saying, okay, nothing wrong with Netflix, nothing wrong with, I love cookie dough. Talk about food. People do this with food all the time, right? Nothing wrong with cookie dough, nothing wrong with Netflix on my end of the spectrum. There is something wrong with numbing. And so it's, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to nurture? Or am I doing this to numb? And so it goes back to binging a whole series of Friends for me, a whole season of Friends for me, versus watching 1 or 2 episodes with the intention of doing something like nurturing myself so I can return in my strengths, return present, return from rest, in a rest and digest mode.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important. Cause like you said, like people love watching TV shows. There's people who like just that, or movies, or it doesn't matter, like video games, things that are sometimes like, they get a hard knock because they're like vegetative, but it's if you're just doing it to like check out, then it's not great. It doesn't matter what it is. Like if I just
Doesn't
play
matter
golf
what it
every
is.
day. Yeah.
Look, I mean, I used to run to disassociate. You know, totally I would go and run. I'd go on 13-mile runs and the world would cheer me on. And yet at the end, I'd be like, for what? You know, if I got the runner's high, but it didn't recharge me, right? Yeah. Runner's high 100%, but 13 miles for no reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have to kind of consider too, like, why are we doing this? What's the intention to begin with? Because I remember, I will never forget, I don't know if it was an interview or I saw it on TV, Oprah talking about how she had a real problem with almonds. And back when I saw that, I was like, Oprah having a problem with almonds. I wish I had a problem with almonds, you know, right? Like, screw you. But it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's almonds or if it's, you know, cookie dough, if it's Netflix, if it's wine, it doesn't matter if it's running, it doesn't matter if it's healthy, considered by society healthy or not unhealthy. It's how we engage with it.
Mm-hmm.
Mic drop. Just gonna walk away now.
Yeah, that's good work. But no, I mean that happens with like fitness too. Like a lot of people that you do the whole, you know, lifestyle change and start lifting and stuff, and then it becomes something else. And there's lots of people who do it for healthy reasons or whatever. I like to think I am one of those people. It's a slow process, but one of my other bestie was talking about that with me at some point in time, how she was like, I'm pretty sure I had it's called orthorexia, where you're just like obsessed with working. It's like a different kind of like body dysmorphia type of disorder, because you're just doing it like you know, waking up at 3:30 in the morning to lift every day and eating like an incredibly strict diet. And it was kind of like, she's like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Why am I doing this? Yeah. Like being strong is awesome. Like she loves that part, but there was so many other things that went behind it that she didn't realize that kind of snuck up on her.
Totally. Exercise bulimia is a huge thing that I've been seeing. And in many of the conversations, because we're taught that these things that are deemed healthy are healthy regardless, like no matter what. And it's just not the case. And I think that's the awareness. I think your bestie having that kind of connect in was like, wait, what? Like taking a step back was huge, huge, because it is like, why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? Yes, I like the results. Yes, I get, you know, probably all this praise on social media if she posts a gym selfie, whatever. But like, why am I really doing it? Am I doing it for me? Am I doing it to nurture? Or is there something else? Yeah.
Now I even have to think about that sometimes too, because I will post stuff on my social media. I don't do it a lot. It's not like I post every single day on really anything that I do, but with like the workout stuff, I'm like, hey, it's more of a, and this is where some of my imposter syndrome comes into, is like, I want to post it to be like, hey, look, like I can do it. I believe in you. You can do it too. And one of the last posts I did that was like lifting related, it was like a picture of my alarm clock and it was at 4:30 in the morning. I'm like, hey, the days when it's harder to get out of bed feel the best when you're done. And then a couple people commented and they're like, I was going to skip my workout today, but now I'm not. So thank you. And I was like, okay. I mean, that's really what I want. You know, I wanted to be like, hey, like you can do the thing, like whatever it is. It doesn't have to be, you know, lifting weights or whatever, but whatever the thing is, like, cause it's hard sometimes. But I have to be careful to not do like too much for the validation, because I have the thing too where I like it when people tell me I did a good job, and then I get the dopamine, and then I don't do the thing anymore because I'm like, well, someone already told me good job for doing it, so I'm good. I don't have to keep working out.
I mean, if we talk about just that post where you inspired people, I think that's like, you know, hey, nurturing ourselves isn't always the easiest option. It's not always the easiest, but it is the thing that is worth it the most. And versus, you know, posting something, this is, I think, going on a little tangent here, but like versus posting something where there is no, like, this isn't about me nurturing myself. This is about, hey, look, I did 4:30 a.m. and y'all are in bed, get your shit together. You know, like it's different. It's the validation versus like, we're in this together. Let's do this. Let's nurture ourselves.
Yeah. It's like you can do hard things too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's good. Rabbit trails are good. So what do you think is the most important step someone can take towards reducing stress and living a happier and more harmonious life as an entrepreneur?
I think it's just managing energy is the very first step, and we can't do much without it. And I think, I guess I want to add a little caveat on this because there is some repetitiveness to this, and that's because I just so deeply believe in the process. Is that, managing our energy well, I'm going to acknowledge that I've lost my train of thought. I'm going to have to come back to it.
Yeah, it's cool. I got you. That happens all the time. Yep.
It's gone. I'll grab it whenever it comes back.
It'll come back. Yeah. We'll just going around the carousel, grab that golden ring, baby. It's okay. I hate that. That's like when you're doing like an interview and you're like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be answering this question. What was it? I'm like halfway through my explanation. I'm like, fuck. That's happened to me more than once.
It's gone. It's gone.
Yeah. Would you want me to do next question and then we can come back around if it pops back in?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. See, everyone, we're all human. Yeah. So let's see. What do I want to ask you next? Oh, so how does someone know that they're working with a coach who knows what they're doing and isn't going to make things worse? Like, finding and or vetting a possible coach, because I'm sure you would agree that it's a fairly saturated and unregulated industry.
Yeah. Okay. What a can of worms, and yet what an important conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think totally unregulated industry, depending on the state that you live in. And even just acknowledging that certifications don't always mean squat. They don't always mean anything. They just mean that these folks, this goes with therapists too, and that's a bold statement on my part, but just because someone has a certification doesn't mean that they are qualified to support you. Yeah. And so I think across the board, first and foremost, you're looking for whether or not you resonate. Do you even resonate with what this person is saying? Are you like energetically pulled towards them? Because if you're repulsed or if you're not even energetically pulled toward them, then that's easy. You're like, follow the intuition, follow the gut feeling, whatever. And just, that's it. They're not a good fit. I think a red flag in terms of working with a coach is a coach that doesn't, allow you space to decide for yourself. So there's really wonderful coaches out there that will tell you, this is the way to do sales. This is the way you're going to market your business. This is the way, you got to do speaking engagements to get clients or whatever. They'll tell you Facebook ads are the thing that are going to fix your business, whatever. Like those people I'm very, very weary of, because the reality is that we live in a complex world, going back to the complexities that we talked about earlier. So anyone that's really saying like, it's my way or the highway, really skeptical of that. Now, on the flip side, having someone who knows what they're talking about, that has the tools and the skills, that's a great coach. But you combine that with having them create the framework or the groundwork for you as an individual to decide, in this framework, what works best for me. So for instance, to give you context, the concept of creative stress reduction. I tell you creative stress reduction works. I fully and wholeheartedly believe that, but I'm not telling you go meditate, go do Reiki, go to therapy, go do this. I'm not telling you to do something specific, because it's up to you to do the work to figure out exactly what works for you. So I'm holding the container, you're deciding. Same thing goes with the block inventory. I could say, oh, your problem is you have limiting beliefs around money. I don't know that, right? Holding the container to say, here's how you can figure out what you need to do. And I think some of the best coaches in the industry are going to support you. They have the groundwork, they have the framework, so you're not just going in blind, but they also allow you the agency, the freedom, the independence to say, like, we're equals, and you figure out what you need to figure out on your end to survive, to thrive, to get to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, because that's actually what I was going to bring up, is the whole, like oh my God, creative stress reduction. I was like, God, it's all gone. We guess that something's wrong with our Wi-Fi. I think I'm sure that's what it is. It's like deleting things from our brain. It's fine. It's fine. But yeah, that's the thing that I like about it is that it's like, hey, like here's the, like you said, the container, the framework, the structure for like the process that you've built out. And then it's up to each person to come up with their individual stuff. And that's one of the things that I don't like about coaching or like influencer land, where it's like, you have to do it my way or you'll fail, or you have to do it this way or you'll never see success. And I'm like, that's absolute bullshit. Like people create successful businesses all the time, sometimes on accident and sometimes on purpose and sometimes with no strategy whatsoever. And it's like, yeah, would it have maybe been easier? Sure. But like entrepreneur life isn't easy. That's the whole, like, it's one of the little quirks in there. But yeah, so I think that is important too. Like the, avoiding someone who like fear mongers kind of like in that kind of way. And, I think the structure is helpful. Like there's new coaches out there who are really good. Again, my bestie and I were just talking about this yesterday too. The whole people who have that kind of like innate, you're either a coach or you're not. Like, I think there's some, like you can do, like if you gave your method to someone and said, this is how you teach this method, someone could repeat that process, but that doesn't mean that they have the extra, the skills, the intuition, the things that come with being a good coach or a good therapist or a good leader or any of those kinds of things. Like when you just kind of have that, the little spidey senses and stuff. Not that you can't do it, but again, anyway, I digress. But
I think that's a learned skill on many fronts. I think it's not a matter of whether or not a coach is good enough or not good enough. I think it's a matter of where they are at in their journey. I think there's a lot of newbies, and I say newbies in a rather than like their first year in, but like kind of spiritual newbies, if that makes sense. Like they haven't done their own personal work to get in touch with ego versus intuition. They haven't done their personal work to separate you from paying their rent. They haven't done, like there's just, everything's too intertwined. And then that's when you really know, like this person they're not in the place to hold space for me because they're not able to detach. So you can tell in the sales process, whether or not it's a good fit. You can tell in just having one coaching call, if they've got the oomph, the juice, the intuition that you were talking about. There's just so many ways. And I would say, if you can tune into your intuition or that gut feeling about whether or not a coach is a good fit, that's going to be it's going to be a really good starting point for you to make a decision as to whether or not you want to work with somebody.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Just talk to people. And if you're going to work on boundaries at any point in time, that's the place to just, if it's not a yes, then it's a no. Like, don't feel like you have to work with someone. Don't let someone pressure you, because some people are very salesy and will pressure you into trying to do stuff, and other people aren't. The people that want to work with you. Right? Yeah. I'm that way.
I think it's interesting, like just my own personal journey. Like if you would have met me 6 years ago, I would have been that person on the phone trying to get you to buy the same day. No, like that is a part of my history and that's part of my learning process. But that is also coming from a place of hiring a fear-based coach, hiring a coach that told me it's her way or the highway, right? I invested, I think, $15,000 in her. So if what she said was wrong, oh my God, my ego mind was going to lose its literal mind. Yeah. And so, keeping that and keeping in mind that everyone's in their growing process, including your coaches. But acknowledging too that the boundaries, right? If it's not a solid yes, then it's a no. I think that's a huge, great piece of advice for folks around hiring somebody. And then I would also say, again, like here's the framework, you decide. The equal partnership is huge in coaching versus this like power dynamic of like, I told you have to do something or else you're going to fail. It's bullshit.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree. Cause the lesson doesn't stick the same way either. Like it's, if you're just telling someone how to do the stuff, and especially when it starts to not work, then you lose all of your credibility pretty quickly. When it's like, well, I tried this and it didn't work. And they're like, well, did you try it hard enough? Did you spend enough money on your Facebook ads, whatever? And it's like, I think you're full of shit, homie. But,
yeah, totally.
Yep.
I had an experience like this a few years ago. I was working with this coach. She had mini me's, and I was on a coaching call with one of her mini me's, and I was like, look, I did the sales process, I've did the marketing to the T, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. Like, I don't know why I'm not making the money I'm supposed to make. And this coach dead ass said to me, you just need to be patient. I was like, is 2 years not patient enough for you? Just like dead ass. And it was, but that's the credibility. That was the loss.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just, this doesn't work. It doesn't work for the way that I'm supposed to operate. And I never had, and that was my kind of, I gave my autonomy away or my agency away, but the coaching relationship didn't allow for space to grow. Didn't allow for me to say, well, this isn't working, so let me do something differently. And I think that's really, it's happening too much in the coaching industry. It's a dangerous place to be in, especially when your business is your livelihood.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people, but then I think a lot of coaches take courses or classes, or they learn a strategy from like people who teach that style, you know? So it's like, hey, if you do this, cause it's basically sales to some degree. And the people that are like, charge $15,000 for your coaching program, which, I mean, good for people who do that. And I think that that's fine. If you can back it up, and if you have some, right. Like this is, sure. Absolutely.
Do it.
That is not currently what I charge for my shit, but, yeah. So anyway, no, that's good. That's good information and advice and perspective, because it's scary. And I think it's important. The number one thing that people recommend. So one of the questions that I'm going to ask you here in a few minutes is, what advice would you give fellow business owners? And a lot of people, probably 90% of the guests so far, are like, hire a coach, period. Sooner. Hire a coach sooner than you think you should, because it will change but hire the right coach. So
hire the right coach. Don't just like go out looking for a spare change of coaches.
Yeah.
The right one.
And you don't have to spend $15,000. Like, if you can't afford that, like, find somebody who meets you where you're at. And sometimes you change coaches just like you change relationships or friendships as you grow and evolve as a person. Like, you're not stuck with the same person for 10 years. Like, you can sign and honestly, if they won't let you sign a like something that's comfortable for you, then that's a no also. Like, if you're like, hey, I'm only comfortable with like 3 months for now, till we like figure out if this is going to work or how we connect and everything, then anyway, sorry. I feel like we go for a while on that. Like, we'll vet your people. That'll be a service that we offer. It's like, send us your coach and we'll interview him for you before you. But yeah, so what are some of or I guess maybe kind of describe how you work with people, because you kind of started to talk about some of that at the beginning, and like, what's your process? So like with me, say like, how does that look? What's the framework?
Yeah, I mean, so we can start at the very beginning. I know you and I were introduced, so we hopped on the phone, having no idea that we were going to work together. So we connected. Yeah.
I think we also, side note, we're like, why are we talking? Like, how did we find each other? And then you like pulled up your email and you're like, oh, Christine. And I was like, oh, that's right. Anyway, sorry.
Yep. Totally. That connection call started off very organically. We were like, we're here, but why? Don't know.
Yeah.
So we were lucky enough to be introduced. As a listener, your introduction would be basically this podcast. That's how you would find out about me. And then from there, I asked Kristen, I was like, what does it make sense? Does it make sense for us to have a conversation to see how I could support you? And we hopped on a stress assessment, and we dug deeper. And based on our conversation, I sent Kristen home with an exercise, and she got to step into that and connect in. And that, just to talk about sales and how I do things differently. I'm on that first call. I'm not selling you nothing. I'm not selling you anything. I send you home with an exercise or something, depending on what we talk about. You get my programs, my pricing, and you get to decide for yourself. And then we hop on the phone again and chat some more. Say, hey, what did you take from this exercise? Even if it's a no, we still need to process that together, because that's my role in supporting you to get the support you need. If it's not from me, it's got to be somewhere else within you or outside of you. So anyway, once we start working together, the first step, that's where we really go into the stress less method. after orienting you to the technology and to, the logistical stuff, we go into the stress less method. So for context, the stress less method is 5 steps. First step, manage your energy. Second step, identify your blocks. Step 3, create your plan. Step 4, remove those blocks one by one. And step 5, embrace grace. So every single one of my clients goes through these 5 steps. And every single one of my clients also has the understanding that the work that I do with my clients, it's not a one and done. It's not here's a 3 to 6 month program where I'm going to teach you how to heal everything and fix everything and become totally stress-free, and then you're going to be fixed for life. No, that's not how life works, right? It's the understanding that this is a journey and that this takes time. And step 5 is called embrace grace, because this is the point in the process where you're experiencing more emotional freedom than you've ever experienced in your life. And you're able to do the deep work over and over and over again. Return to step 1 if you need to manage your energy because a global pandemic happened and you didn't see that coming, right? Return to step 2 of identifying your blocks because maybe you were single when we first started working together, but now you're in a relationship and all that abandonment stuff is coming up, right? Return to creating the plan. Every one of my clients creates a 30-day plan every 30 days, right? And so it's an ongoing practice, an ongoing process that my clients work through and continue to stick with consistently to get to where they want to go. So I just wanted to kind of put that asterisk on there that this is not your traditional coaching program. This is not run how typical folks run things. It is following the cycle of reality, which is that we are all on a journey. And the journey is a spiral. It's not a straight line. It is a spiral, for sure.
Yeah. It's never a straight line now.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It's super helpful. I think it's always nice to be like kind of talk through like what you actually do. So if people are like, oh, okay, like that makes sense. Like it seems like something that would be helpful. So as an entrepreneur and business owner yourself, what advice would you give fellow business owners when it comes to running their businesses?
It goes back to what I've been saying. I think manage your energy, manage your energy, manage your energy. Get yourself into rest and digest mode so that you can think clearly in your business. Because if you can't think clearly, you're effectively screwed. Just, referencing the pandemic, the difference, I think, one of the main differences, there are many, but one of the main differences that I've seen between the businesses that thrived through the pandemic and the businesses that didn't do so well is their ability to manage their energy, think clearly, and make decisions on the fly. And so if we can manage our energy, that's going to be the biggest piece. And then second piece, because I don't think you can just manage your energy and be done, is to really do the deep work after you're in rest and digest mode to say, what's stressing me out, what's causing grief, and what's really at the root of this, and how can I pull those out so that I don't have to deal with this crap over and over and over again.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's huge. And I think you're right too. Like there was a very clear difference. There were so many businesses where they're just like, yeah, we can't do this. And I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, there's all these things that you could do still, or do things differently, or change up your menu, whatever. Yeah. And like you said, some people just absolutely crushed it. Okay. Hold on. What time are we at? Okay. Come here. We'll have to edit this piece. Chill out, homie. Okay. So let's see. What resources do you wish you'd known about or taken advantage of at the beginning of your entrepreneurship journey?
It's a great question. I think on a logistical standpoint, well, first and foremost, I wish I would have hired the right coach to begin with. I think it would have saved me a lot of time and a lot of money. But on a more logistical standpoint, I think having an accountant from day one would have been really helpful. And also I hired a lawyer. This is very logistical, but I hired a lawyer to create my LLC. I don't know why I did that. That was such a waste of money, or an expensive kind of lawyer. Cause I was like, oh, got to make sure to do this right. That was an ego-based mind decision. So I would say like, just get your LLC, do your own paperwork, or get somebody who's affordable, or get another business owner. That's what I would have done. If I would go back, I'd go to another business owner and be like, how did you do this? Can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a lot of wasted money on silly things that didn't need money spent on at the beginning.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's a good way to put it too. Just talk to find other business owners and like make connections and build relationships with them, because you never know when you need a mentor for something or just a referral for something too. But yeah, totally. Bookkeeper was like the first thing that I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to pay somebody for this shit.
Meanwhile, I was on, TurboTax, like what is that?
Trying not to weep at your desk. You're like, come on.
What?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Bookkeeper and accountant, they're not as expensive as you think, especially if you don't have employees and you don't have a lot going on. If you're a brand new business, like you don't have as many expenses, because that's basically what it's all related to is time. Time is money for accountants and attorneys and people like that.
Yeah.
On the attorney thing too, you may also be able to find somebody that will do something pro bono. Sometimes there are attorneys out there, or there's lots of ladies in Polka Dot that I've met too, but locally as well, that do like pre-made forms and stuff where it's like, hey, you can, instead of having to pay for my actual services one-on-one, here's this stuff. So that's a big thing.
I've seen in my community of like different networking groups that I've been a part of, there are lawyers now that just sell you their templates. Like if you want a contract for a client, they'll be like, it's $100, grab it.
Yep.
And that's a deal. I know when you're first starting out in business, you're like, money, but like it's a deal. Same thing goes with, is it Sherry Andrews? She's a Polka Dot. Like she's in PA. She's the East Coast, PA, Maryland. Who knows what else?
I don't know her. Lisa Sigmund is, she's over there. I think she's also in Boston. Or wait, are you in Boston? Where are you? She's in Boston.
I'm in Philly.
Oh, you're in Philly. Oh my God. Everyone I talk to is like, I know on the East Coast, I'm like, all I can remember is that the math is really hard to figure out where you are. I'm like, what time is it? Lisa Sigmund. And then, who was the other one I just talked to? There's a few.
I know Sherry Andrews. I don't know if she does templates, but she's one of the most affordable lawyers I've come in contact with, and her work is incredible. And she doesn't charge hourly. She does something a little different. So you can look for those lawyers that are not charging you hourly or charging you for their templates. There's different ways that are outside of the traditional
like
way
subscriptions is also a thing. I talked to another gal. She's local and she does subscriptions. So it's more expensive than like Rocket Lawyer, but you get a one-on-one with an attorney. I think she does like once a month, and she also does a couple of other things inside of that. So there are a lot of attorneys for sure that are doing things like that, where it's like, it's not just the traditional like $500 an hour or $300 if it's my PA, like you can, or a paralegal. So no, definitely. I think it's good call. Yeah. So tell us how we can best support you. How do we internet stalk you? What are you working on? How do we find you?
So many questions.
I know.
So you can find me at The Stress Less Co. basically anywhere on social. If you're feeling like this, like the energy vibes, and you want to explore working together, what you'll want to do is submit an application at stresslessco.com/apply. And you'll fill out that application. I'll review it within 48 business hours and get back to you if it's a good fit for working together. And how can you support me on the internet? I would say I have a conference coming up in October, on October 1st, called Selfish Philly. And it's basically the self-care conference for women in the Philadelphia area, East Coast even, you could say. And so if you're in this area, I'd love to meet you in person. And if you know people in this area, shout it out. You can follow us at Selfish Philly on Instagram.
Nice. That'll be cool. I'll have to check that out. I saw that in your notes to me the other day, and I was like, oh, I've got to go look at this first. Very cool. Well, I am glad that we connected for so many reasons, and thank you for coming on my podcast and hanging out with me.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, I will talk to you soon.
All right.